everybody. Jason back. Appreciate you being here. I know everybody that is here is a movie lover, and I got to do this one. Forrest Gump. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. That includes the actors, the storyline, the special effects that they put in place here. That was pretty much new at the time. 1994 is when this hit. And as you can see on the cover right here, winner of 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture of 1994. So this one is one to have in your collection, and I'd be very shocked if I found one person that hasn't actually watched this. The Blu-ray looks outstanding. The picture quality, the audio, the special features are wonderful. I'll just go over them real quickly. And then again, there's 2 discs. One of them is the feature film and some special features, and disc 2 is just full of special features. Disc 1 has a commentary. Actually has 2 different types of commentary. Musical signposts to history. And in here, most of them, all if not all, the special features are done in HD, so it makes it look that much special. And then disc 2, there's a ton of behind the scenes stuff. Screen tests, a diary that they put together during filming. It shows you how they did some of the things. Like, for example, how did Lieutenant Dan, how did they show him with no legs? And it shows you how they did it. It's wonderful how they did it, and a lot of CGI, a lot of added stuff to make it the magic work. So this is one to get for sure. 100% guarantee. You must go out there and get this Blu-ray. All right. So we'll go ahead and get. I got a piece of paper again right here that has some of the information that will go before we talk about the cast. I really just wanted to talk first is how much it made during the original theatrical run. $677 million worldwide. That's a lot. I don't have the numbers exactly what their the money they had to produce this, but that seems like a lot, especially back in 1994. And I don't have this information either, but I'm certain in 1994 there was quite a few movies that summer that this was competing against, and this was the top one of 1994. It's also one of the top movies of all time, and it's definitely something that everybody needs to watch. All right, let's get right into the cast. Obviously, we got to do the title character, Forrest Gump, which he is played by Tom Hanks. And I got a little bit of information, which I already knew this already, but it shows who they could have picked. So again, Tom Hanks actually played the part. However, Bill Murray and Chevy Chase were also considered for the role. And I gotta say, I like those 2 guys. Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, hilarious people. They just would have been the wrong people to bring in. Tom Hanks filled this guy right. When you think Forrest Gump, you think Tom Hanks now. There's the book that I've read. You got to read the book. The character is a bit different than this guy, a little bit more mean and definitely not family friendly. But even if I read the book now, I will think of Forrest Gump in my head as Tom Hanks. All right, next is Robin Wright. She plays Jenny Curran, which is Forrest's childhood friend and girlfriend, and later in the movie, a wife. She did great in this one, and she played the same character, but throughout the whole movie, it's different time frames in their life, and she did an outstanding job with this. And the unforgettable Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan Taylor, or what Forrest is called Lieutenant Dan. Gary Sinise did absolutely awesome in this job right here. Absolutely amazing. That's pretty much all I can say about that. But he did great. I can't think of anybody else that could play Lieutenant Dan other than Gary Sinise, honestly. All right. Bubba Blue, Benjamin Buford Blue, is played by McKelty Williamson, and he didn't have that big of a part, but it was a major role in this movie, and he did outstanding. He meets him, Forrest meets him in the army, and pretty much his whole life is based around what happens in the basic training. You know, he talks about being a shrimp boat captain after he gets out of the army, and that he would love to have Forrest as his co-captain. So again, McKelty Williamson did awesome on that one. All right, Sally Field played Mrs. Gump. She did a great job as well. You see her when she's younger, you see her when she's older in here, and I thought that was pretty awesome. A small role here, but definitely notable, is Haley Joel Osment. He played Forrest Gump Jr., and you just meet him at the end of it. He's very young. I believe this is his first role. And lastly, the two kids who played young Forrest and young Jenny. Michael Connor Humphreys, who played young Forrest. This guy, I guess, was in the army during the Operation Iraq Freedom, so that's pretty cool to hear. He did great, and I know they both studied each other. Him and Tom Hanks studied each other to kind of get the same mannerisms, and I thought that was really cool. And also, trying to see if, no, her name's not here. It's drawing a blank, so I do apologize. I don't have the young Jenny, her name, so, but she did great. That was another one that did great. It's in the very beginning, so it's not that big of a part, but she did great as well. All right, well, let's get right into the plot of this. And again, the plot of this is it's not really complex, but there's a lot that's happening. There's a lot that's happening in the very beginning of it. Forrest Gump is sitting on a bench in Savannah, Georgia. He's got a box of chocolates, which is a memorable line. You know, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And he's pretty much, this entire movie, he's telling a story to random people that sit on this bench. And that's what happens. He's telling the story. There's flashbacks of while he's telling the story. And that's what happens at the very beginning, is you meet young Forrest and young Jenny. And you notice that at an early age, he didn't have use of his legs. He had braces on his legs. But he grew out of them somehow. It actually shows him running away from bullies. That's, you know, there's a lot of similarities throughout his lifetime. And this is one of them. In the very beginning, you see him running away from school bullies. And while he's hobbling along with his braces, they break off and he starts running. And that's when you first notice that he's got an ability to run amazingly. And that helps you out later on in this movie. So basically, after that, more stories. He actually goes to the University of Alabama on a scholarship because he was so fast that they put him on the football team. Of course, he's not the smartest. This is the first thing I'm going to say is Forrest Gump is definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed. There's some funny scenes here as well. But he's good enough to actually make the member of the NCAA All-American team, which is the first meeting of many for Forrest to meet the President of the United States. This time is President John F. Kennedy. And the way they did this in this movie, they put Tom Hanks's character inside actual scenes that actually happened. And I know this is brand new at the time, but even, it's 2017. It still looks amazing. The way they did that, the way they put a green screen behind Tom Hanks, and he actually shakes the hand of JFK, and it's absolutely amazing the way they did it. And this scene's memorable too, because he says, the one thing that what would you say if you met JFK? If you were able to shake his hand, what would you tell him? And he says, "I gotta pee," because he drank so many Dr. Peppers. That was his favorite drink, and it's absolutely funny. So after 5 years in college and playing football, he still at this point had no idea what he's going to do with his life. And upon graduation, immediately you have some recruiters for the Army. So he joins the Army. And it shows him going through boot camp, which was really cool. This is where he meets Bubba for the first time. There's an awesome scene where they're scrubbing the floor with some toothbrushes, and he's talking about all the different things that he's going to do afterwards, the different types of shrimp and stuff like that. It's a pretty long scene, and he goes on and on and on, but honestly it's a great scene. This entire movie is filled with great scenes. I'm just going to be honest. There's not one scene in here that I cannot come up with that I would say is negative, honestly. So after boot camp, they're directly sent to Vietnam, and this is where you meet Lieutenant Dan for the first time. And just some of the scenes in here are funny. One thing before he left to go to Vietnam is he went to go talk to Jenny on leave, and she says, "If you ever get in trouble, whatever you do, just run away, just leave." And this actually helped him because there's an ambush that happens in Vietnam, and Forrest decides to run, and along the way he sees different soldiers who are injured, and obviously he can't pass them up, so he carries, like, I don't know, about 7 different soldiers and puts them in a safe area. And as well as Lieutenant Dan, his family, Lieutenant Dan's family, has a history of going to war and dying in combat, and this is what he wanted to experience. This is what Lieutenant Dan's life was. He wanted to die in the combat as a hero, and Forrest saves his life. However, they have to chop off the bottom, his legs at the knee, and that's what happens. As soon as, at the same time, Forrest is shot in the butt. The buttocks is what he says, which ends his time in Vietnam. And they're both in the hospital. But because of all this stuff that's been going on, of him saving lives, he actually earns the Medal of Honor. And he goes on TV and describes his story on TV. And as he's exiting the studio, he sees Lieutenant Dan again. This is somewhere in New York City. He's in a wheelchair. He's obviously been out of the military for a while. His hair's long and more like a hippie type, kind of like a drunk, probably done drugs. So his life has been crappy, honestly. And he's still, I think inside his heart, he is thankful for Forrest, but he still doesn't show it at this time. At this time, he's still upset that he saved his life. He's presented with the Medal of Honor by LBJ. So this is the second president that he actually meets. And again, the movie actually puts him in there, as if he's actually earning it from LBJ. So again, awesome effects here at this part. After this, he's actually put into an army ping pong group, which travels around, including going to China and stuff like that, and then travels around to different bases, and he ends up being like the world's best. He's the world's best ping pong player, and The way they did this as well with the special effects, it's amazing to find out what they actually went through, and that's what the behind the scenes stuff on the special features show, how they did all this. And that the Blu-ray alone and the DVD with these special features are worth paying for it, honestly. So basically, he also meets President Nixon, and he's the one that actually reveals the Watergate scandal, and that was pretty funny. Apparently he's trying to sleep in one end of the Watergate hotel, but he wakes up because of some flashlight across the way, and wakes him up. He calls it in, and it ends up being the scandal that was happening at Watergate. Pretty funny scene, honestly. But shortly after this, he's discharged from the army. He makes $25,000 from ping pong endorsements, and he takes that money and he buys a shrimping boat. He had promised Bubba that he was going to be a captain, and even though Bubba's not there, he actually still did it. He gave a little bit of the money to Bubba's family. Lieutenant Dan joins Forrest Gump as his first mate as well. There's a hurricane that happens because at first they weren't successful. They were not successful at all. But a hurricane went through and wiped out all the other boats except for his. So all the shrimp was for him, and they created the shrimping company called Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. And they are multimillionaires, and what happens is he finds out his mom's dying, so he leaves the boat for good and goes back home to Alabama, and his mom passes away. He takes over the house there, and Jenny comes back in the picture at this point. I mean, you see her throughout the whole movie, but what happens is she comes back here and they live together, and it ends up she gets pregnant. You don't find out to the end that she had a baby because she left in the middle of the night. So that's where he's actually going. He got a letter from Jenny, and that's what happened in the beginning. He's at that bus stop, and that's where he was actually going to meet Jenny in Savannah. So as soon as he's done with the story, he actually he didn't have to take a bus. He can walk the few blocks over to her house, and that's where you meet Forrest Jr. They get married, but unfortunately she has AIDS. She ended up having AIDS because she did all the drugs, and you see her throughout her life. She's done a lot of drugs. She ended up getting AIDS, and she died. And at the very end, he takes care of Forrest Jr. And as he's taking him to the bus for school, that's where the ending happens. So that's the end of the movie. Again, it was an awesome movie, and this is definitely a must-see. And this is where I'm going to give it my rating. And this one, a lot of movies aren't like this. This is definitely 10 out of 10, a max rating for it. Must see. Everybody must see this. It just shows you what kind of life, even this guy who is known to be an idiot, kind of slow, it can be successful. And obviously this one's a little over the top, but I thought they did a great job. So definitely go check out the book, the Winston Groom book, Forrest Gump. Definitely worth the read as well. It's pretty close to the movie. They did a great job. The movie did great. There's a couple of extra things in the book that are different. And remember that Forrest Gump in this character is not he's not family friendly, so to speak. He does cuss a lot. So that's the one thing they changed for the movie. There's also a second book that I do own. It's called Gump and Company. It's a part 2 that they that Winston Groom wrote after the movie. But they're not going to do a movie because Tom Hanks is not on board with doing it, and I'm in the same boat. If Tom Hanks doesn't do it, then there's no reason. to have it. But go ahead and read that book too. Find Gump and Company. Is another good one. Another crazy story that happens. All right, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time. I know that this one was a bit longer than the other ones, but it is one of my favorite movies of all time. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button here if you can. This button, go ahead and click it. That will then you can subscribe to my channel. I'll also put a couple additional videos, one here and one here, that you can click on to do a quick link to those videos. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day.